circles you and I mix in, criticizing these channels, and yet, when they go home, they make a point of watching them. So I ask you that question again. Do you really think civil society will make that move?
I don't really have an answer to that, Karan. They may, they might not, but we have to keep hammering away at it. We have to keep making this point that which is what I mentioned in the beginning, that I also blame society. We are not responsible enough. We take the easy way out, and therefore they can do it abroad. You remember Brightheart, that channel, the purveyor of hate of Mr. Trump. More than 1,200 companies have pulled out ads from Brightheart because of pressure from civil society.
Absolutely.
So we have to wake up. We have to wake up, and this connects with another point I have, that retired bureaucrats, retired defense services people, etc. We don't speak out enough. We don't speak out enough to the conscience of society.
Okay. There are two people in your blogs who are considered icons almost in India that you are surprisingly very critical of. Let me bring them up one by one. The first is Ratan Tata. You say of him, notwithstanding his tall claims to philanthropy, Ratan Tata always knows which side of his bread to butter, and this is usually the winning side. That is not how Indian people think of Ratan Tata. Why do you have such a poor impression of him?
Mr. Tata is a philanthropist, no doubt. He's probably one of the biggest philanthropists. But he doesn't speak out when on issues that require to be highlighted, or the issues that require to be condemned or commented upon. It's all very well to fund a school here or an NGO there, but this is small change for somebody of the stature of Mr. Ratan Tata. He needs to do more. I mean, he can't assuage his conscience by giving out a few crores for certain welfare activities and not speak out where the future of the country is concerned, where the type of governance we need is concerned. You remember the withdrawal of the Titan ad. Titan had taken out that ad a few months ago about remarriage, it was, or interfaith marriage. It just took 24 hours of protest by some goons, I think in Bangalore it was, or Hyderabad, for him to pull the ad. Now, that doesn't impress me at all.
I think, just to correct the record, that protest first happened in Ahmedabad. I may be mistaken, but I don't think I am. But you're right. It was withdrawn very quickly, and it was said that it was being withdrawn to protect the security of Titan staff, which may or may not be the truth. But instead of standing up for an ad that most people thought was touching and beautifully made, Titan capsized. Let me come to the second major celebrity that you're critical of. This time, it's a cinematic hero, perhaps the greatest of them all, Amitabh Bachchan. This is what you write of Amitabh Bachchan. Amitabh Bachchan has too many bones in his mouth to be able to bark. What are you exactly suggesting? That he's let down the country or that he's let himself down?
He's not let himself down. I mean, he's doing pretty well, I should say, financially, from the various endorsements, etc., which he does. He's also a great, the face of a lot of government ads, on which is good. I mean, on wildlife, on conservation, on things like water supply, Swachh Bharat, and all that. That's fine. But he's an icon. He is a role model. He's acquired that stature because the public look up to him. But he has a duty to that public also. which what I mentioned earlier about corporates also having duty. So similarly, he cannot just ride the gravy train, make money out of it, and ignore the other issues. I mean, once in a while, you'd expect him to come out with a tepid, bland statement, at least, if you don't want to go the whole hog and condemn the government. So at the end of the day, he's letting himself down also. He's letting down his stature. And so one is disappointed, extremely disappointed, because you expect such people to once in a while make a mild anodyne kind of statement also, if you will, but do show that you are concerned with some of the visceral issues of this country also, and not just making money.
Can I put it like this? Your criticism, it seems, of both Ratan Tata and Amitabh Bachchan is very similar on important issues where they have the capacity, the stature, and the economic standing to protect them. They still fail to speak out. That's fair, isn't it? They're scared to speak out. They haven't got the guts, presumably. Or perhaps they have something that worries them that would make them vulnerable to the government. Either there's a weakness in a closet they're hiding which would make them vulnerable to the government, so silence is protection, or they lack the guts, the moral commitment to speak out. But one or two applies to both, doesn't it?
Yes, probably all the things you mentioned, probably all of them is what holds these people back. But then, how do you differentiate the men from the boys? I mean, everybody has these fears. We all do. I mean, you dig deep enough into anybody's life, the most ordinary citizen's life, and you'll find something with which to, if not crucify him, at least make life difficult. I don't see what kind of financial fears Mr. Amitabh Bachchan could be having. He's okay. At the end of the day, I think it's just greed. It's just greed, which makes them.
Did you say greed?
Greed.
They want
greed for more influence.
They want more from the gravy train.
Absolutely. But these people are influencers. You have a duty. I mean, it's not just a voluntary thing. You have a duty. Otherwise, you step down.
In contrast to the Ratan Tatas and Amitabh Bachchans is the future, the light down the road that you saw when young people in their hundreds, thousands, came out on the streets of India to protest at the time of the Citizenship Amendment Act, at the time of the National Register of Citizens protest. This is what you wrote of those protests. These are miracles which will make this country a much better democracy. You said, for the very first time in our 71-year history, the concept of secularism has come out of rarefied and elite portals. It now mingles joyously with ordinary citizens in the streets, parks, and universities of India. Explain that a bit more fully.
Karan, the concept of secularism is perhaps the most debated in this country, even more so nowadays. But the debates remain academic. They're either academic, or they are in parliament, or they are in the high courts and the Supreme Court. It is very, very rarely that you get the common man, the boy and the girl in the street to express their concept of secularism. And some of these protests, especially the CAA and the NRC protests, showed us in no ambiguous terms at all how strong the roots of secularism are in this country. And, because these protests were tried to be branded as being supported or in favor of a particular community. So they came out of their hijabs and burqas and everything. And you remember that famous case where that Yeah, that young student from JNU, a Hindu girl, spoke out about against the CAA, and she said, "I'm a Hindu, but I oppose this particular bill." There was a recent Pew Research survey, just a couple of weeks back, which said that 84% of the respondents in India, and they had interviewed more than 42,000 people, 84% of the respondents from all communities were in favor of secularism and for having the faiths together for tolerance. So it was an occasion when the people spoke as against the rulers and the judges and the parliamentarians, and they spoke very loudly. And that gives me a lot of hope, that because it was primarily the youngsters, who are going to be the future of this country, who were making this particular point. It was
But
very
there was,
exhilarating.
but there was one other community that at that time won your applause. And when I say won your applause, that's a euphemism. When I read your blog, you were almost bowled over by them, and I'm talking about the Muslim women of India. A moment ago, you referred to them when you said they came out of their hijabs. This is what you write. They have sprung the biggest surprise. Theirs is the real secular pushback against both Hindu fundamentalists and these obscurantist ulema. But I want to put you, this is not so much a miracle as a reflection of the fact that the rest of us didn't know them, didn't understand them, and made no effort to get to know them, which is why we were surprised. But they were always strong, determined, loving, caring, and committed. It's just that our eyes were not seeing, or maybe worse, they were closed.
True, absolutely. But I called it a miracle, Karan, because it required a lot of courage for these women who have been brainwashed, traditionally told that this is your role. You don't come out onto the streets. You say, stay at home, and you do whatever has to be done at home for a hasif. But these women came out. So it was a rebellion, not only against the CAA, but a rebellion against their own religion, or certain traditional rites of passage of that particular religion. And so that's what makes it even more secular. That's what makes it even more secular. It's not just the CAA, it's their own traditions and past, which they have come out of. And hopefully, having tasted that kind of freedom in Shaheen Bagh and other places, they will not be the same again.